Hi, my name is Michaela McGowan. Today I'm going to be working on some activities from the Practical Critical Thinking book by Catherine Connors Nelson. The first assignment that I'm going to be working on is working on this figure. I am going to be taking the figure that they presented in the book and I'm going to be creating my own design. I do have to use 5 minutes to complete this assignment, so rather than having you guys sit there for the full 5 minutes, I will be fast forwarding through the artistic part. I do have different colored whiteboard markers, so depending on what I feel like drawing, I will be able to utilize some different colors. So stay tuned. I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes and I will see you back. All right, so there you have it. Turns out that that little squiggle was part of her head and that little swoop was a part of her braid. I'm gonna bring you closer here for a moment so you can take a look at. I don't know who would ever wear their hair like this, but you know. Sometimes being able to have the opportunity to create something out of nothing is a lot of fun. So I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to skip and move on to the next assignment. This next one, oh, I should give this one a detail. What should I name it? How about the girl with the funny hair? No, that's not nice. How about we name her Sloan? I don't know. She looks like a Sloan to me. All right, so then we will go ahead and pause here and I will move on to the next part of the assignment, okay? Okay, now we're back. So one of the things that we're gonna work on here is we have been given this shape and the instructions that we have are to create a shape that is equal parts, the same size and the same shape, which is really challenging when you look at this, because if you were to try to use triangles, you could try to divide it up here and here and here, and you would get 4 shapes, but they wouldn't be the same size. And one of the things that I was looking at in our book is that when we use our critical thinking, we have to allow ourselves to think outside the box. And so as I'm thinking outside the box, I realized that this is a perfect square. So if I were to take my chalk pen and I were to use my ruler, I could measure outside the box and say that we are going to create a shape that is the equal size and equal shape, and I already measured this here. And now we've got a shape that we can divide into 4 spaces. All it takes is a little bit of thinking outside the box. You got to give yourself permission to think outside the box. And I hope that that scraping sound doesn't bother you like it would my son. But here we've got, I'm going to have to go back to the original old school chalk. And here we have it. 4 even shapes that are all the same size. The next one is called the candle problem. So here we have materials on a table. We've got a candle. We have a box. We have a box of tacks. And we have some matches. And the goal is to take this candle and put it on a wall, which the fire safety person in me says don't do that. That's not a good idea. But if for this purpose you're going to do that, what I would do, and I admit I've been giving it a little bit of thought, you can use everything that's on this table. You can use the tacks, you can use the box, and I don't really see what you would have a purpose for the match box, but you definitely could use the matches. So here's what I would do, and I'm going to move my book over here. I would take this box and I would put the box up on the wall. Okay, so this is my box. It's my little 3D box. And this is why I didn't want to use this type of marker, because I feel like it smears more than the pretty marker, the pretty chalk markers. But okay, you get the point. So here's my box. There, ta-da, my box. I would take the tacks, and I really don't like the idea of sticking one tack on here. We've got like a box of 100 tacks. I'm gonna use them all. I am going to place them all along the inside of the box. And just for safe measures, I'm going to put them underneath. I'm gonna give it a little bit of extra support. And you're not gonna be able to see it because it's gonna be underneath the box. But this box is gonna be held up and supported by all the tacks along the bottom. Now I'm gonna take this candle and I'm gonna stick the candle inside the box. And again, for fire safety, I don't trust that this candle is not gonna tip over. I'm gonna stick a bunch of tacks along the bottom of this candle, and I'm gonna push it in from the outside of the box into the candle, and it is gonna hold. And I still don't like the idea of doing this. So I'm gonna stick some more tacks on here. I'm gonna go overkill with all the tacks. I'm gonna use so many tacks. All right, so there we go. We've got all the tacks. We've got the tacks along the bottom. We've got the tack along the edges. We've got tacks all in this box. This box is not going anywhere. Now we can take the lighter and we would be able to light the candle. Here we go. Okay. So here we've got all of the items that are on the table attached to the wall. But again, I don't recommend it. Just go to the Dollar Tree and just go and buy your own candle. I wouldn't do it. I'm gonna pause the video here again, and this time we are gonna move on to one that I thought was exciting and a little bit of a mystery. The case of the lead masks. So bear with me a moment. Let me get myself situated and set up, and I'll be back with you in just a second. Okay, welcome back. So here we have a story, it's a real story of two men who were found in Brazil back in 1966. I'm going to assume that you know the basic information about the story, so I'm not going to go through and read everything about the story. However, I was able to break down the basic information and try to filter out some of the more fluffy information. Some of this stuff that could be useful information, but isn't the most important information, in my opinion. So, just like with writing, I like to break it down, and it looks like you can't see it, so let me bring you closer here. Here we have the facts. The who, what, where, when, and why. We are talking about two men, 32-year-old Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana, 34-year-old male. These men were both found, they were both found lying next to each other on the grass on a hill. They were dressed in suits and raincoats. There was no obvious signs of violence on the bodies of either men, no trauma to the body, and there was no evidence of struggle in the surrounding areas. Where? They were found on Vietnam Hill in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. They were originally from a small town several miles to the northeast of where they were found. When they were found, they were wearing lead masks, which is used to protect themselves from radiation. These lead masks were made themselves, and the plates that they were made from were found in Viana's shop. There was no radiation found at the scene. Next to their body were empty water bottles, was a empty water bottle, a packet that contained 2 towels and a small notebook. Written in that notebook was 4:30 p.m. be at the agreed place. 6:30 p.m. swallow the capsule. After the effect, protect metals and wait for mask signal. There was also a return ticket for the water bottle. So this where information did give me a few questions. I'll come back to my questions in a moment. Let me give you the when. When did this happen? August 20th, 1966, 2 men's bodies were found. When we were able to backtrack, we found that 3 days before the bodies were found, there was possible unusual behavior. That was on August 17th. Both men said that they were leaving to purchase materials for work and to purchase a car. They took enough money to purchase the car. They boarded a bus to Nairobi, which is where they were located. They arrived at 2:30 p.m. They purchased raincoats at a local store and a bottle of water from a local bar. The report from the barkeep stated that Viana was nervous and checking his watch frequently, and the bar is the last place they were seen alive. Prior to the bodies being found, independent reports of UFO sightings were reported that night. So a lot of people contacted the police station to inform them that they had found UFO sightings that night, the night that the men believed to have been killed. When the men were found, there was no visible injuries to the body. Looked like they died from the heart stopping without cause. Unfortunately, an autopsy was not completed in a timely manner, and there were no toxicology reports. In that time after they were found, the organs were mishandled and they were unable to get reliable results. However, a pathologist was able to look for and did not locate any injection sites on the men's body. When we think about some questions of why, there are some questions that formed in my mind, and I will address some of the whys. And some of the whys came from the questions that I had. First of all, there was an empty water bottle. Was their water bottle full of water at the time, or was it full of chemicals? Did they ingest something besides the capsule that they were said to have taken? Were these men prescribed medication, or were they known recreational drug users? When they discussed after the effect, they were to protect metals and wait for the mask signal. And there was a lot of questions that I had for that one. First of all, was this 30 minutes after the effect of the capsules? What does protect metals mean? And then wait for the mask signal. Who is going to issue this signal? There's also a question about the return ticket for the water bottle. Does that mean a receipt? Were they planning on returning a water bottle? Are we talking about a plastic water bottle or one that is a single-use water bottle? So some of the whys that occurred are, was it a suicide? So this was back in 1966. Were these men lovers who were trying to run off from their family and had an intention of living together, and for whatever reason it didn't happen? Was this a suicide pact? Were they planning on running away? Did they get nervous? Where did their money go? Was this, we were talking about UFO sightings. Are there any images? This is 1966, so cameras did exist. Were there any images of UFO sightings that night, or was it all verbal reports? Was this murdered? Was somebody else there at the time, and did they take the money? Why would these men need to swallow this capsule? And was this a sacrifice? You know, these are from, this isn't the United States, so this is from, you know, a small town that they had gone to. Did they sacrifice themselves? Were they experimenting? Were they trying to use drugs to have an out-of-body experience in hopes that they might have their own alien encounter? One of the questions I have, and unfortunately because the autopsy wasn't completed, we don't know, but were the men's eyes open or closed? If they had the metal on their faces, were their eyes open? Was their cornea damaged? If there was a light outside that caused damage to their body, which in the report it says that there is no damage to the body, would the corneas have reflected additional damage? Unfortunately, because the autopsy wasn't done, we don't know, but I would venture to say that there is not, that the cause of death was not radiation. So as we break it down and start examining the evidence, we have some questions that we need to ask ourselves, and we have a special key. And bear with me a moment because I'm going to step and pause the video for a second and grab my pen. Okay, so we have the evidence proves that it's true. The evidence proves it's false. The evidence proves it's probably true, but it might be false. The evidence proves it's probably false, but it might be true. Or undetermined. There is not enough evidence to make a determination. So the first thing that we were talking about is, was DeCruz and Viana expected to meet someone? I'm going to say it's probably true, but it could be false. So I'm going to go ahead and put a check mark here. And my evidence is that Viana was nervous and he was looking at his watch. The notebook says, be at an agreed place. Wait for the mask signal. The men pulled out enough money to purchase a car, but the money wasn't near them. Where did the money go? DeCruz and Viana expected to encounter some form of radiation. I'm going to, again, say probably true. Probably true, could be false, but the fact that they were electronic technicians and they were wearing lead masks to cover their eyes tells me that they were expecting to see something that could burn their cornea. DeCruz and Viana were conducting an experiment. I'm going to say there's not enough evidence to prove that, and I'll tell you why. Yes, they pulled out a lot of money, but there was limited notes. Their notes only said, be at agreed place and put on your mask when the signal says. Doesn't say that they're going to be having any UFO experiments or radiation experiments, and if there were, there would be other items there at the scene, other technology sources. Remember, these were electronic technicians. There isn't enough evidence that the lead masks were to do anything more than to protect the men's eyes. Number 4 was asking whether or not DeCruz and Viana were in a violent fight with someone, and I'm going to say probably false, but it could be true. And I'll tell you why. They received the capsules to swallow from somebody, which could have stopped their heart. But there isn't any indication that there was a violent fight. There's no trauma to the bodies. So I'll get to my hypothesis in a minute. I do think there is somebody involved that is not the person who found the body. But I don't think that it was a violent fight. I don't think that this was intentional. DeCruz and Viana were murdered during a robbery. And I put probably true, could be false, but the thing is I don't think it was a robbery in the way that you and I would think, where they were getting mugged. And I'll tell you my hypothesis in a little bit, but they have a lot of money that's not accounted for. Where did that go? DeCruz and Viana intentionally killed themselves by ingesting the capsules. This one was hard for me. I don't think, I said probably false. There wasn't a suicide note. And my first question was it a suicide pact? Did they intend on running away together? But then why would they have pulled out all that money just to commit suicide? That doesn't make sense. So I don't think that they were intending on dying that night. De Cruz and Viana were expected to meet aliens at Vinten Hill in Niterói. And I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce that correctly. I'm going to say they probably thought they were. That's probably true. The lead masks were used to protect themselves from possible radiation exposure. Now remember, they're from a small town. So all they have are stories of this hill being notorious for UFO sightings. So I predict that they were using the lead masks as a way of being able to keep their eyes open in case bright radiation lights were shining down, similar to how we would do it if we were to look at the sun during an eclipse. De Cruz and Viana were killed by aliens, and I'm going to say probably false, and I didn't say no, not enough evidence to make a determination, because I think they were killed, but I don't think they were killed by aliens. There's no trauma to the outside of their bodies. So my working hypothesis, and I'm going to read it just because I've given it a lot of thought. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So someone knew there was going to be a lot of UFO activity that night. Somebody likely reached out to these men who were from a small town. The men likely heard stories about Vinten Hill having a lot of UFO activity, and they were curious. I think somebody preyed on their lack of critical thinking experience and skills. I think they were promised an opportunity to witness UFO sightings if they showed up at a particular time in exchange for a large sum of money. I think they were conned. I think they were told to take a particular capsule to enhance their experience, and that the capsule had too much of a particular drug that stopped their heart from beating. Now, I did try to look up different drugs that might stop your heart from beating, but I was afraid that I was going to trigger something in my computer. But one of the drugs that I know that we experience now is fentanyl, just a tiny little bit, and that can stop your heart. Not saying that that was in fact what they took, but since there's no toxicology reports, we don't know what they had taken and what was in that capsule. I think they were victims of a con artist who provided the men with drugs and unintentionally killed them. I think this is more of a scam than a robbery that led to their death. I think this also was done by somebody more organized, because there was a lot of UFO activity that was occurring, and I think that this was a way of getting the locals excited about something mysterious occurring. The reason and evidence: there's no trauma to the outside body. The autopsy was not completed in a timely fashion, which tells me that, I mean, maybe there's a coincidence that the autopsy wasn't completed, but this seems like a pretty big deal. I feel like the government would really want to know who were these men and why were they there, and why were they there wearing raincoats and lead masks. There's a large sum of money missing, and the reports of UFO sightings, again, I think that this was put on by a group of a skilled organization that had a lot of pull and was trying to manipulate the citizens, and in particular these men. So let's go through here and let's see. Do I think they met someone? That's probably true. Were they expecting to encounter some form of radiation? Again, probably true. Were they there to conduct an experiment? We don't know that. There's not enough evidence to show that. They would have more tools there. Was there a violent fight? Probably not. Were they murdered? No, wait a minute. Let's look here. Number 5. Yeah, were they murdered? Probably, but not, I don't think it was intentionally. I don't think they were intentionally going to get murdered. Was it suicide? I don't think so. No, I don't. I think they would have left a suicide note if they were committing suicide. Were they there to meet aliens? Yes. Let me set this over here for a second. Were they there to meet, oops. Were they there to meet aliens? Yes. I think that is what they thought they were doing. And finally, were they killed by them? No. So here's what I think probably happened. I think 2 men were contacted by a government agency to witness an electrical experience of a UFO on Vinton Hill. They were told to pay a large sum of money in exchange for this experience. And I think they were told to keep the experience secret. I think the men were given drugs to enhance their experience, which ultimately killed them. And I think it was an inside job, which is why I think the autopsy was not completed in a timely fashion. And a lot of the evidence is what I already gave you. There is no trauma. The autopsy is not done in a timely fashion. There's a large sum of money that's missing. There were a lot of reports of UFO sightings. And then the haphazard way of creating the lead masks. This was literally just cut from metal, from lead metal, and there was nothing fancy about these masks. So I look forward to having an opportunity to do more of these activities. I think it got me really thinking, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.